Perhaps it's not surprising that one person more moved by Martin Poop Smear's Living with Michael Jackson documentary than maybe anyone else in the Jackson family was Michael's father, Joseph. Every time he sees Michael on television describing how he was being as a child, Joseph couldn't help but cringe. Today, Joseph regrets many of his actions, wishes he had made different choices as a parent, even if he does put up a tough front. Michael first spoke about his view of his father in a 1993 interview by Oprah Winfrey. There are times when he come to me, I get sick, Michael said. I start to regurgitate. He's never heard me say this, Michael added. I'm sorry, he said, looking into the camera. Please don't be mad at me. He hasn't to add, but I do love him. Afterward, a visibly hurt Joseph went on television and said, I didn't know he was gurgitating sick, but if he did gurgitate, he gurgitated all the way to the bank. Due to the nature of their conflict relationship, Michael then felt so bad about his words to Oprah that to show his deep regret, he bought Joseph a new automobile. I was tough on him, Joseph told me and Michael a few years before Oprah's interview. At the time, he and Michael weren't even speaking. The subject of their disagreement was not known to me. See, the thing is, I wanted him to know that the world was not a nice place, Joseph went on. He was so damn sensitive, more than the other kids. I was worried about him. Me and Katie both were, so yeah, I admit it, he said a bit defensively. I was hard on him, maybe too much, huh? His eyes searched my face for an answer. Maybe I should back off, do you think? I don't know. I do know this. I would do it differently today. He shook his head sadly and concluded, my father doesn't wish he had the chance to go back and do it differently. By February 2003, Joseph's son Michael was 4 years older than Joseph had been the day he took his talented boys to Motown to audition for the company. Then Joseph was vigorous and full of fight, arguing with Barry Gordy and Edward Abner, playing around behind his wife's back and ordering his boys about in his own inimitable way. Now he's slowed down. He sometimes finds it difficult to rise from a chair. Those who know him best say that 73-year-old Joseph Jackson has become, in his senior years, sentimental and even sad about the past. He wishes his relationship with his wife and children had been better, more satisfying. Somehow he has managed to set it straight with Catherine, especially in the last 10 years. Despite all that has happened in their family, the infighting family politics, hurt, anger, betrayal, and disappointment. Joseph and Catherine, 72, remain united as husband and wife. They have been married for more than 50 years. The names of the women who have come and gone from their lives have been relegated in the distant past. Now, what was that girl's name? Catherine reluctantly recently asked him in front of a family member. They were speaking of Gina Sprague from almost 25 years ago. Joseph thought for a moment and had to smile. I swear to God, he said, I can't remember. Catherine looked perplexed for a moment, then exclaimed, My goodness, Joseph, neither can I. Oh well. Given all the evidence, it could be said that what should have been the story of a family's transcendence and triumph over poverty turned out instead to be a tale of tragedy and disappointment. However, maybe that's a cynical view of the Jackson story. What if Joseph hadn't been so driven to transform the lives of his family? What if they never left together in Indiana? What would they have been better off there? It's doubtful. They have had a remarkable, thrilling life in Los Angeles, even with all of the intense and often hurtful melodrama. At the root of it, we love each other, Joseph has explained. I guess that's what has kept us together all these years. Even when it got bad, he said, before correcting himself with a smile. Even when I got bad, and I did get bad, that woman loved me, and my kids loved me. I like to think. You don't see that in this world so much. I'm a lucky man. Joseph and Catherine were both upset about the Martin Poop Smear documentary. They know how easy it is to point a sensational picture of their most famous son. They felt that Poop Smear had exploited his obvious eccentricities and were incensed by his machinations. They were also moved by Michael's recollection of his childhood. It was obvious from his demeanor that he was still in such pain. When Joseph telephoned Michael early the next morning, he found him crying. Michael said he felt wrenched about the way the documentary had turned out, and according to a family member, he told his father, I just hope that in 20 years my kids don't see it. What will they think of me, Joseph? Joseph said that he and Catherine wanted to visit him as soon as possible at Neverland. It had been some time since they have been to the ranch. Michael was suspicious. In the past, whenever Joseph wanted to meet with him, it had to do with a scheme to reunite him with his brothers. Michael didn't have the energy to turn him down again. I promise you, Michael, it's not about the brothers. Joseph said, it's about us, you and me and Catherine. Plus, he said, we want to see the kids, please. He was referring to his grandchildren. They're as important as to us as they are to you, Michael. Michael must have been moved, whereas show business was once paramount in his life. It is true that his children are today his primary concern, his great passion. Ironically, the allegations of abuse leveled against him a decade ago. Those charges that particularly laid ruin to his life and career had surprisingly consequence. They were the catalyst for change. Evan Chandler, father of Jordan, had promised to ruin Michael. You're going down, he told him. You're going down. It was a terrible threat. One no person would ever want to hear. In an effort to repertorize his world, Michael then reached within to learn what might truly matter to him. He wanted to be vitally involved in something meaningful, not just in show business. And he decided that would be in the raising of his own children and that he would find the most satisfaction. So he had children, not in a conventional manner, but what else could one except Michael Jackson? Catherine and Joseph arrived at Neverland a few days after the United States broadcast of the Martin Poop Smear program. They would then spend the next 5 days with Michael and his children. Mornings will begin with the ritual of Catherine and Michael having breakfast together on one of the patios, the air thick with the mingled scent of the wildflowers. Catherine has said she so enjoys they they would then feed the children in the expansive kitchen. Expansive. Meanwhile, Joseph would sleep late in one of the guest quarters. When he awakened, a personal butler on staff at Neverland would assist him with his morning needs. Joseph would then spend afternoons with Michael, taking in the well-manicured vastness of Neverland. Talking privately, from all accounts, they looked happy to be together. One of the few occasions that Michael's also present that week at Neverland recalled the afternoon father and son were having seen a picnic with Prince Michael first on one of Neverland's verdant lawns. Catherine and Paris were off with a staff member to a Toys R Us store in nearby Santa Maria. The babies spent the afternoon sleeping because it had rained earlier in the day. Dampness lingered into the chilly February afternoon. Still, as they ate a fried chicken meal prepared by Michael's personal chef, the bright sun shone down upon them. 3 generations of Jackson men laying on a blanket, talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. I love him, Michael later said of his father, and I totally forgive him. Joseph and Catherine were delighted to check in on their grandchildren and see how Michael was progressing with them. They found that Prince Michael First and parents are bright, confident, affectionate, and considerate. They pray before meals. They are polite, thoughtful, and funny. Michael becomes angry when they swear, as they sometimes do since most of their friends are adults. He never spanks them, however. He will never lay a hand on them, but as he puts it, no means no. He doesn't raise his voice in anger and doesn't seem to do so. They're generally well behaved. If one does act up, he or she has to endure a timeout, which means standing in a corner alone to cool off. Michael explained that he rations the youngsters toys and sends presents they received as Christmas gifts from his fans to orphanages around the world, allowing the children to keep just one. He has taught them not to refer to any of their toys as mine. When friends are over to visit, he wants them to learn to share. It's telling maybe that he doesn't like seeing his children stare into a mirror for too long when getting ready for the day. I look great, young Prince once said as he combed his hair. No, you look okay, Michael said, correcting him. Though Michael was always been fond of dogs since being bitten as a child, he got over his fear in order to buy the children a much wanted golden retriever. If they have a question, and children always have questions, Michael will not give them an answer unless he is sure it is accurate. He makes use of his expansive library to look up factual responses to even the most innocuous questions asked by his children. Michael and his governess dress Prince up as if he were little Lord Fauntleroy, whereas Paris wears dainty, lacy, and velvet dresses. The baby, Prince Michael II, seems happy and well adjusted. All three openly adore their father once a year. He dresses up in full clown regalia and thrills them. If I could spend all my time with Daddy, I would do it, Prince Michael first told Catherine. I think he's the best daddy in the whole world. Michael scooped the boy into his arms. "You're the best little prince ever," Michael said, kissing his face. "I love you," said the child. "I love you more," Michael responded. While Michael was recording tracks for Invincible at the hit factory Sorteria Studio in North Miami, Prince Michael first spilled some popcorn on the floor, according to a report by Brett Sokol. A producer was about to bend over to clean it up when Michael intervened. "No, let me," he said, apologetically. "He's my kid. I'll clean up after him." Then, according to the producer, I looked down and there's Michael Jackson on his hands and knees, picking up his son's popcorn. I'm not sure you would see Madonna doing that. Of course, there could be problems for his family in the future. The day may come when his three progeny will wonder why their mothers have decided to play such a small part in their lives. They could feel abandoned. One day they might limit their childhoods just as their father does his. Though there are never any guarantees in child rearing. Only time will tell these three will turn out. Michael Jackson's family is unique in almost every way. His children have faced his challenges in life perhaps even greater than those faced by their famous father. They've been made to wear brightly colored gauze scarves that resemble burqas and other kinds of disguises in public is disturbing. The two older ones must watch television and movies and realize that they are the only kids on the planet Earth wearing masks when it's not Halloween. Certainly, being forced to hide their faces in public puts the two Prince Michaels and parents at risk of becoming antisocial, paranoid adults. In the summer of 2003, Michael and his two oldest children went shopping in a Santa Monica store. He had on a red and white baseball cap and a lavender surgical mask. Prince, then 6, wore smart little slacks and a vest. Paris, then 5, had on a red sweater and plaid skirt with ruby-colored shoes that resembled Dorothy's from The Wizard of Oz. Both children had on red and black Spider-Man masks, which covered them from the neck up. Father and children were followed by Latoya with a straw hat. What a scene! Why does Muckle think his children must be protected in such unprecedented ways from kidnappers? Again, using Jackie Kennedy Onassis as an example, no woman has was ever more famous than she was, or more protective of her and the president's children. Yet she would never have thought to make them wear masks in public. In fact, no celebrity in recent memory, if ever, has seen fit to disguise his or her children in such an outlandish way. Even after Frank Sinatra's son, Frank Jr., was kidnapped in 1963. Sinatra didn't make him wear a disguise to prevent future abductions. It begs the question of whether such costumes are for the children's sake or a way for Michael to distinguish himself as the most prominent sought after man in the world, and thus his offspring as the most prominent sought after progeny. At the very least, he seems to be imposing his own fears into them. However, they're his children. It could be argued that he can therefore raise them in any way he sees it fit, as long as he doesn't abuse them. Also, David Rowe has said it was her idea that the children wear masks and scarves. However, given Michael's ages old habit of wearing disguises in public, that explanation doesn't seem likely. There were ways he disguises his children aside. Has Michael Jackson finally found happiness as a father? On some days, yes, it would seem that way. From all accounts, he is a father who is good to and for his children. He has joyous times with them, watching them grow up, being completely involved in their lives. Hopefully, parenthood has been a self educated experience for him, and he's now getting straight for himself his history of abuse and yearning for a better childhood by giving to his own children that for which he has so longed, loved with no strings attached, nothing expected in return, unconditional. In other days, he remains one of the walking wounded, a lost boy holed up at Neverland, cowering from an over ever present world. How can I get past the pain? He recently asked one associate. That's a question I ask myself. I'm so tired of being controlled by fear, he admitted, and by my own BS. He's working on himself, working on forgiveness. He has good days, he has bad. The latter spent sitting on top of his so-called magic tree, content to return to retreat into his imagination, reviewing his life, feeling unhappy about the way things are, coping as best he can with it, and wanting to effect change in his life, just wanting some relief from it all. Who knows? But maybe when it is robed of all of his fortune and celebrity and his unconfidential behavior, it's in that very human place of restless discontent that some of us can find commonly with, of all people, Michael Jackson. About 2 years before the Modern Poop Smear interview was broadcast, Michael gave a speech at Oxford University about raising kids. Launching his global initiative for his Heal the Kids charity, much of what he said as absorbing, especially what it seemed to have as much to do with his feelings about Joseph as it did his own experiences as a father. What if he grows older and resent me and how my choices impacted their youth? Michael asked rhetorically of his children. Why aren't we given a normal childhood like all the other kids? They might ask. And at the moment, I pray that my children would give me the benefit of the doubt, that they would say to themselves, our daddy did the best he could, given the unique circumstances he faced, I hope. He concluded that they will always focus on the positive things, on the sacrifices I willingly made for them, and not criticize the things they had to give up, or the errors I've made and will certainly continue to make in raising them. We all have been someone's child, and we know that despite the very best of plans and efforts, mistakes will always occur. That's just being human. The week Michael's parents visited in February 2003, Michael enjoyed most of his time with them. Of course, as sometimes hap- happens with families who've had troubled history, there's a brief and sudden disturbance. On the third day, Michael and Joseph became embroiled in a disagreement. The specific subject of the quarrel is unknown, but witnesses recall Michael loudly insisted to his father, it's none of your business, Joseph, this is my house. It sounded like the sort of argument that has been engaged in by grown children and their visiting parents throughout the ages. Joseph stormed off to his guest quarters, where he remained for about 3 hours. Catherine ran to be with Michael. The two had an intense conference in the kitchen as Michael cradled Prince Michael II. By sunset, however, whatever it is that caused the abrupt outburst that had blown over, Joseph joined his wife and son and grandchildren for dinner in the ornate dining room. On their final morning together, it again rained. As the black limousine approached, that would be the senior Jacksons in their 2 hour drive back to Messina. The day's first sun rays shimmered through dark clouds, suddenly filling the sky with an incandescent light. Michael was dressed for a meeting scheduled that day with business associates. He was fashioned as if he were European royalty in a black jacket, a white on white tuxedo shirt, and a white tie pressed in it. An artificial mane of jet black hair and a straight page boy cut fell just to his shoulders. He was also in full makeup with thick eyeliner and densely penciled eyebrows and lipstick. He even had powder on his hands. He and his mother embraced, holding onto each other for a long moment. Catherine whispered something into her son's ear. He smiled broadly and kissed her on the cheek. Affectionately, Joseph then took hold of Catherine's arm and helped her into the stretched vehicle. After Catherine was seated, Joseph turned to Michael and pulled him into a bear hug. Michael seemed to melt into his father's arms. The two held on for a long moment. When he finally released him, Joseph patted Michael on the shoulder, showing his tie for him in a fatherly fashion, and then got into the car. The tall oak gates of Neverland opened before them as the Jackson parents were slowly driven away, leaving Michael at the foot of the long, long road leading out of the ranch. He waved goodbye as they disappeared into the horizon. Michael lingered a while, perhaps with memories flooding him fully, carrying him back to Messina with his parents, farther back even to Gary with the rest of the family. While he stood there silently, a light rain began to fall. He tilted his head back, letting the yellow drops fall upon his face. As if on a cue, a young male in his 20s wearing a black silk shirt and slacks hurled toward Michael, trailed by two uniformed aging housekeepers. The trio gained momentum as they realized the king was getting wet. The man opened a bright red umbrella with a flourish and held it above Michael's head. The woman wrapped him with a scarf and cloak as he stood motionless, like a mannequin being staged for display. Michael attempted a small smile of appreciation to the three. Their faces remained stoic. As the rain began to fall harder, Michael turned away from those gates that opened to the outside world. The four then made the long trek back to the main house at a slow pace. Michael and his two Michael and his young servant sat by side under an umbrella. The two old maids dragging behind, becoming drenched in the downpour, an eerie parade of strangers in the rain, none of them speaking, all knowing their task, onward to Neverland.